Welcome to the review of the Xbox Bethesda show, and by that I mean we're going to be talking about Starfield. Starfield was my most anticipated game of the year outside of Elden Ring, back when it was still releasing in 2022. I had really high hopes for this game. I wanted it to be everything that I wanted No Man's Sky to be back in the day, right? Which I shouldn't have expected it to be because it was made by an indie company and yada, yada, yada. We all know how that turned out. I was hoping that maybe a company as big as Bethesda could provide me with something like that. That they could provide me with what Todd Howard promised would be Skyrim in space. If the trailer is to be believed and we're not being BS to like Todd Howard did to us when he talked about Fallout 76 back in 2018, Starfield looks like exactly that game that I always wanted it to be. It lets you build a spaceship and lets you fly through space, and that was enough to sell me on the game side. You can confirm this. I was freaking out when the showcase was shown. It looks like it's going to have all the staples of a typical Bethesda RPG, create your own character, have main central hubs, main central cities that you go to get your missions, main story, side stories. And then, there's the base building that was introduced in Skyrim, carried on to Fallout 4, but within a galactic context. There are some things that I'm a little bit worried about and things that I would like to talk about that I don't think people should be so worried about. But on the whole, I was very, very happy with what I saw. And I know people aren't happy. Just relax. We'll get to some of that stuff in a second. Just bear with me. I'll explain why I am happy. I'm going to throw this over to Syb. What are your impressions?
So my impressions lie basically within what I think most everybody is feeling, in the sense of like combining it into a whole. So I've been pouring through tons and tons of feedback on this, and I've been gauging comments, and I've been looking at not just on our channel, on a bunch of other channels, and I've been looking at polls that people have been setting up, that kind of stuff. And about 50% of the people are like, okay, I'm going to wait and see, which I think is the most reasonable thing to say.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Then about 34% say that they are loving what it looks like, that they're really excited for the game, and that they believe that this is actually going to be a good thing, and they're really excited for it. And then the rest of that is full of people who are really angry at Bethesda for screwing up in the past. And I've got to say that, yes, I understand that people are really still angry about some stuff. But it's kind of funny, like, listening to one person, he was like, I've been burned by Bethesda so many times. I hate what they've done so many times. And it's like, what have they done? Like, what did they mess up? And he goes through the list of like, I loved Fallout 4. I loved Skyrim. I loved Oblivion. I loved Morrowind. And I'm like...
So you're just talking about 76 then?
So he's just talking about 76. He's like, I love Fallout 3, but, so angry at 76. And it's like... And again, I can't take that away from people. When they get burned and they feel like, they've been insulted and they feel like they've been mistreated, that's something that's going to happen.
The 76 thing was enough of a burn that we shouldn't forget it, and it's within the context of a whole bunch of gaming failures of the last several years that should motivate all of us to not pre-order, as you've always said, Cy. But like you just said, it's about taking things as a whole. There is 76, but there is all those other games as well. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. So there's concerns, obviously. So I kind of want to address these concerns while I still have it like fresh. So let's cover the concerns first.
Sure.
Because I think that's important. So I feel that the gunplay, it's like people were like, oh, it's not tight enough. It's not the best that it could, in comparison to other gunplay games. And I'm like,
right. I agree with
that. It looks like a Bethesda shooter. Like, it looks like Fallout 4. It looks like, and I don't think that's necessarily bad, because it is what it is. And I don't think that there's a lot of people who want the gunplay to be absolutely perfect, but they don't actually have like a meter for that or something, because they complain about every shooter that's on the market, right? So I think we can look at the shooter aspect of it and say, what's going on here? Why is it like this? What can we do about it? Sure, those are decent complaints. Gunplay always gets like improved up with mods down the road anyways.
Yeah.
But I also believe that in this case, what we were seeing like intro weapons. And I would like to bring up this is that if you saw or if you watched Fallout 4, where the main character is using pipe pistols over and over and over again, you'd say, oh, that gunplay is so bad. Yeah, because it is. It's a starting weapon. You're not using a pipe pistol, in 60 to 100 hours after you've started the game. You're using like tons of other high-powered weapons that do feel really good. And I would like to point that out, that when people are complaining about the gunplay, they're complaining about the gunplay in the confines of this was the first mission, and those are all the basic weapons.
The first mission, are you talking about in Starfield or Fallout?
No, in Starfield.
Oh, well, how do we know it's the first mission, though?
Because Todd literally said this is the first mission.
Oh, okay. All right. My bad. I guess I missed that part.
You start landing on that planet and going to that raider base, and that's what starts you on the main mission.
Okay.
That is literally the first mission. If again, he said it was the first mission, that this is where you start your journey. So yeah, those are starting weapons. And I think people really need to remember that starting weapons in a system and in a game where the weapons and your general game gunplay improve over time because you have a leveling system behind your weapons.
Yeah.
And you have skills and you have this other stuff that you can use. And that's, I think that's what people are missing. And then the next thing I want to showcase is the big thing that everybody's upset about.
The planets.
Supposedly. Is the number of planets.
Well, hold on. Before we get into that, because that's going to be the main thing that we need to address, I want to throw this over to Moon, because we haven't gotten her general impressions yet. Moon, I don't, like, the people that watch this regularly, they sort of know what my and Syb's experiences are with the Bethesda RPGs, but I don't know what yours are. Have you, like, what's your experience with past Bethesda games, and what was your impression of the Starfield trailer?
Well, I'm not so much into the shooty shoot. I'm definitely a huge RPG fan. And like before, like I have played Skyrim. I didn't really get into it during Elder Scrolls, but when Skyrim came out, I was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. And then the Fallout stuff. I think Fallout 4 was the first one I touched, but I was playing it on the Xbox. It's not the greatest system, so it was extremely janky and clunky to play on there. So it was like, while I did enjoy what I could play on there, but I couldn't really stick with it long term just because like it would take what felt like an hour to load up.
I remember that.
Yeah, the save bloat is a real problem. And then also that's the original.
That was the 360,
Xbox.
I think. I was playing it on.
Fallout 4 came out on the 360?
No.
Was it 360 or the one after?
Oh,
I don't
one.
remember.
One after.
There's
One.
too many of them. Too many Xboxes. Too many consoles.
Yeah.
Too many to keep up with.
I remember playing on the Xbox One and experiencing the same problems. It's part of the reason why I played like 10 hours of it and I just stopped. Because like with Skyrim before it's just when these games come out, they're in such a mess. But anyways, continue, man.
The parts that stood out to me the most in this trailer was the crafting system and the shipbuilding, because I'm all about that. I really like leveling up my gear and whatnot, and like I wouldn't be surprised if they also had like a crafting system for better weapons. And the ship part, I'm really excited because I think I've played a game before where you could like build the ship in like a 3D scape like that, but like I wasn't actually able to go inside. I could just play the ship, right? Just send the ship out and about. But with this one, I'm super excited to be able to build my ship and go inside.
The interiors for those ships looked awesome. Star Citizen, eat your heart out. Right.
And so I think that's a good point to jump over to the 1,000 Planets thing.
Okay.
Because there's been a bunch of games that have tried this in the past. Obviously, you know, the comparison everybody's making right now is it's No Man's Skyrim. Ha ha ha. But I'll tell you one thing that Skyrim has that really you didn't really see very much good stuff in No Man's Sky, and that was their procedural, interactive encounters that you encounter. It's the gameplay loop. It's the follow a fox and you will discover treasure. It's the walk down a road and you will encounter somebody doing something. Now, Todd has talked about this technology before and how in Skyrim that was like 1.0. In Fallout, it was 1.1, essentially. This is like 3.0. Now, again, Todd has blown this stuff out of proportion before.
Yeah.
But I think that people are like, oh, I'm going to get to a planet and then there's going to be nothing there. It's just going to be a walking simulator for hours. And I'm like, I don't think that's the case. Because Bethesda is the best in the gaming sphere that has random encountered events that shift and change. And if this is an upgraded version of that, then we're going to see a whole lot more. And I think with the world building features, we probably will encounter bases and populations and towns and stuff on other planets that somebody else may not necessarily encounter in their game. And I think the possibility of that is pretty darn cool, because if they could procedurally generate like content for the world to do, and if it's better than it was in Skyrim, then I don't think you're going to have nothing to do. I think there are going to be some planets that are not going to have life and they're not going to have that much to do, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to be doing something or encountering something that makes life fun and interesting.
I understand why, because it was such a problem when No Man's Sky came out, and that was really the only instance of that type of technology being used and it failing. The difference between No Man's Sky and Starfield is that alongside the procedurally generated content, there's going to be content that is curated by the developers, content that includes central hubs that everybody goes to. You know, we saw one of them, New Atlantis. No Man's Sky didn't have any of that. There wasn't any major settlements, major cities, branching quest lines that you would expect from a Bethesda RPG. It was virtually the same thing over and over. And that's fine. You know, like No Man's Sky got to a point where it worked. But even then, No Man's Sky as it is right now, I think it could have been so much better if it had that thing, which it seems like Bethesda is trying to add with Starfield. So keep that in mind. Just because there's 1,000 planets doesn't mean that you necessarily have to go to all of them. I'm sure that the majority of the game is going to center around those central hubs. And then if you go to those other planets, you will be doing that just in case you need like resources to build up your base, or you want to find a planet to settle on, or maybe there's achievements for discovering a certain amount of things on a certain amount of planets, that sort of thing. But I think there's a scenario here where I think you can argue that people are blowing this out of proportion. Now, we could be wrong. Maybe this will be like another No Man's Sky situation, but I think people are focusing too much on how this could turn out bad when there are scenarios where it could turn out good.
Yeah, so one of the things that people are making lots of comparisons to from this to No Man's Sky, but No Man's Sky is not an RPG. Like, there's no RPG mechanics in No Man's Sky. There's very little conversations with aliens. There's no deep missions. It's very much a sandbox game, whereas this game actually has an actual mission, an actual storyline. And you're not told that you have to go visit all 100 systems. You're going to have a quest, a chain that takes you from point A to point B in the story, and you're going to have choices in between that. And
even though we might have to wait a few years before it's used to its fullest potential, we do know that because it is a Bethesda RPG, there will be modding tools. Bethesda is basically giving us the entire universe to make quests on different planets. People, I imagine, will coalesce around the best planets in the galaxy and then create quests there that you can download. This is something that I imagine Bethesda has created so that it can last on its own for the next 20 years, just like games like Skyrim have, games like Oblivion, well, more so than Oblivion, because that's sort of outdated. So ideally, Starfield would provide us with enough content right out of the box, which it always does. Even if the game isn't as good as past RPGs, it's still got like 100 plus hours of content. There's going to be so much more that the modders create with this, and I cannot wait. I'll just get to a couple of my concerns really quick. Going to what you said about the combat side, I think you did make a really good point about how the gunplay isn't meant to function like every other first-person shooter. The whole point of an RPG is to build up your stats so that you can become more accurate, so you can build more accurate guns. And if it is the first, which I'm trusting you that it is the first mission, then I'm sure that that's a good example of why the accuracy and the shooting kind of looked really off. Hopefully that's the case. Another thing is the frame rate. When you have a trailer that is at 30 go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the thing that I think we should remember is that this is playing on the Xbox when they recorded this. This wasn't on a souped up PC, and so I think what they're showing is they're showing the baseline ability of what you can expect realistically on the Xbox. I think when they come out with the next version of the Xbox, the 1.5 of the generation of the current
Series
generation,
X.
I think it's going to be better. Streaming this on their streaming device might be better. I don't know. We'll see. But on PCs, where people, they build powerful PCs or they get everything optimized, I think we're going to be able to see a lot more. This is something that, of course, we want to encourage people to, not again, you don't have to believe them. You don't have to, jump to the defense. Just remember that they showed this on the Xbox.
They didn't pull a CD Projekt Red here.
Yeah. And I think that's good to remember, and I think that that's important to remember. And the other thing too is like people comparing this to Horizon Forbidden West. Horizon Forbidden West is pretty much a straight like an arrow experience. You start at one place, you do very minimal like backtracking, and you see the whole story, and then you're done. That's the game. You don't go off and build a settlement or colonize a world. So comparing the two seems ridiculous to me because it's not the same thing. This isn't a single player linear story that you can't replay over and over and over again with vastly different outcomes.
That's a very strange comparison. Like they seem like completely different games. Like I understand like maybe using Verizon not the phone service. Horizon Forbidden West is sort of like the benchmark for graphics or something, and wanting other games to live up to that. But aside from that, I don't see like what the point is. Anyways,
the other thing that people are forgetting is that Bethesda has this system where they can like interject voice lines and stuff like that into characters. It's really awesome. Like, I've done a lot of mods, and one of the things that we were able to do is we take newly recorded voice lines, we run through them through their lip syncing program, and then you get the lip syncing, which is honestly fantastic. A lot of people criticize them and say, "Oh, the lip syncing is so terrible." It's like I don't know where people are getting this from. When you're looking at other games, Horizon Forbidden West, what you're seeing is mo-capped performances by the actors. Those are recorded and put into the game. What you're seeing in Skyrim is not motion captured voices. It's the program for them to give the voices. And sure, one is better than the other in the form of presentation and quality in a performance. The other one allows players and modders to put in dialogue, to just sit down, record dialogue, put it in for a character, drop the character into the game, and boom, you have a character with custom voices. And it really works quite well. And that's a system that it's here so that we can do more with this game later. And that's what makes a Bethesda game a Bethesda game.
Yeah. It's the exact thing that makes Skyrim a game that's still being played and still being sold so many years later. The base game was it was great back then. If you try to go back and play it now without mods, it's very difficult to do so. And I hope that in regards to Starfield, that's not the case. It doesn't seem to be the case, but, we've been fooled in the past. Moon, in regards to the stuff that we talked about, in regards to graphical presentation and gunplay, I know you're not, like you said, you're not into the shooty, but anything that you like to say in regards to what we just mentioned? You can say no.
You guys pretty much said it all.
Okay. All right, no problem. I did have one thing that I wanted to ask Syb. We've been talking about Bethesda moving beyond the creation engine into greater technology, better graphical fidelity, and we saw that with the Starfield trailer. There are things, it's kind of like what I said about the Resident Evil engine on the last show that we did when I was comparing it to the Callisto Protocol. There are things where it's like, holy crap, that looks really, really good. I can't believe they managed to make it look that realistic. And then there are one or two things where it's just like, really? That's the best you could do? Or it just sort of took me out by like how janky it looked. So, for example, with Starfield, the landscapes look ace. Like, they look really, really good. The far off stuff, the sky boxes, when you're actually flying your ship in space, that looks top notch. Even when it comes to the up close stuff, that tended to look pretty good too. And we know how bad things up close can look with some of the more recent Bethesda RPGs. But even in regards to Starfield, they look pretty good. But there are one or two circumstances where like some textures look really, really muddy or really, really blurry, and they didn't seem to really congeal well. And then there's some like character models where it looked really, really creepy and off-putting. Sometimes they look good. Like there was one guy wearing the spacesuit, and he was talking, and it looked really, really good. But then there was like the woman before where it zoomed in on her face, and she's not really moving in a very lifelike way like a person would talk when you're talking to them. It's sort of like the stationary dialogue that you would have with the Oblivion characters, that looked really off-putting. But aside from those things,
that technology is like they're making a decision to go back to the Oblivion style way of doing conversations, and I think that's a mistake, and I'm hoping that the modders can fix that. But yeah, so there's no voice protagonist, and all conversations automatically switch to first person, and so you're kind of locked into this view with this person. Where in Fallout 4, when you're talking with somebody, you didn't have to be in first person, and they would continue to do things like use a cloth on the counter or something like that. And it's like, when you don't have that, I think that's a mistake, because it does make these characters look a little less lifelike. Most conversations I have with people is like people are they're still moving around, they're still doing stuff, right?
Multitasking.
Yeah, very few people stand there and face each other like perfectly still, hands down at their side, and have a conversation. That's a very off-putting way of doing it. Yeah. But
even during the show, he was doing the listen to me hands, trust me hands. He kept moving them around. And it's like, if the character's not even doing that, it's like, how realistic is that actually?
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I don't agree with, but other people like that because it's a return to more of the Oblivion style of conversations.
Right. It makes me feel nostalgic. And ultimately, for people like us, it's sort of, well, at least for me, it's kind of like a nitpicky thing, but I can see where other people would be like, okay, this is taking me out of the game.
And so that is one of those things where it's like, what is the better choice? I don't think there is an answer to that. I don't think there's an answer to, yes, it is this way or that way, 100% precisely. I believe that what we're getting is a stylistic choice, and I think modders will fix it, because let's face it, in this, the only thing they could have done to make everybody happy was to have a choice and have like toggles for like, do you want conversations to be in first person or third person? Do you want conversations to have a voice protagonist or not a voice protagonist? And those are a lot of things that you can't really justify that in the form of trying to put every single option into the game and then just having a bunch of toggles that most people will never even like realize are there.
Right.
People tend to complain about a lot of things, though.
No, on the internet, in regards to Starfield. Okay, so is there any like major positive or negative that stood out to you that we haven't gotten to yet?
the best positive is the ship fighting. I think the ship fighting is great.
Yeah.
I think the scope of the universe being as big as it is good. It looks interesting. I'm really excited to like get in and take things apart. This comes from somebody who spent like 2,000 hours in Fallout 4 and 5,000, like 4,000 or 5,000 hours in Skyrim. It's ridiculous. I think we're going to see some good stuff from this. And as far as like the downsides or things that are concerning, a lot of that is wait and see.
This is something that like we hope that he makes good on what he's presented to us so far. And for me personally, it's a wait and see sort of thing, because like I don't want to get burned again. But so far, I am optimistic, I guess you could say.
Yeah,
yeah. At least it's like it's a galactic sci-fi exploration type RPG that's coming out, which will hopefully live up to its hype.
Yes. I'm sort of right there with you. I am optimistic. I do think it's reasonable to be cautious about the promises that Todd makes to us. But based just purely on what we saw, it seems like they're going in the right direction. It seems like this game is everything that I want it to be. And it seems like they're making the right decisions when it comes to, being ambitious, but not too ambitious. They could do like the 15 quintillion planets like they did with No Man's Sky or whatever the hell the number is. But they're not. They're keeping it a little bit more contained to 1,000 planets. Even if that doesn't work well for the core game, which it might not, it could. That could very well happen. I think the foundation that we have here and the possibility of modding is just too great for us to not be optimistic, at least for that. So maybe it'll come out, it'll be bad, but I think the future does look bright in general for Starfield.
Did you enjoy that video? Let us know by slamming that like button and leaving a comment below. And if you really liked it, consider joining the SSS Legion by joining our online community, supporting us on Patreon, or checking out the merch store. Subscribe for tons more guides and other fun videos. And for insightful gaming news content, check out our sister channel, SSS Podcast.